Hello, welcome to the James Cooley Show. It's your life, and I'm your host, Dr. James J.C. Cooley. And I tell you, I want everybody to get prepared for today's show. We got our guest coming all the way from Alberta, Canada, and she is going to share her new book and a lot of things about the hunt. And the hunt is, finding a job, resume, a lot of things that we all need to have a clear understanding, especially when we're on the hunt looking for a job. So I am so excited to have this guest on. Michelle going to introduce her shortly. So I just want you to sit back, grab a couple of bags of popcorn because we're gonna have fun, and with our guests all the way from Canada. But before I do anything, I have to always bring my executive producer and co-host, Dr. Michelle Denise Cooley. How are you doing today,
I'm
Doc?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Yeah, just this topic about the hunt and everything else that Jennifer is going to talk about today. Mostly about finding a job. Oh my gosh, that is a finding a job is a job in itself. Oh my goodness, it's like even though you're qualified and you have what they want on paper. I believe it's all about, gelling together and kind of, fitting in, so to speak. It could be about your personality too. But I am really interested in what Jennifer has to say on this topic and other things that she is doing.
Yeah, because I mean, I read some of her book, and you just mentioned something that's very important in when you're hunting for a job because you are checking the companies out, and they are checking you out. So it got to be a perfect fit, somewhat perfect, in order for you to feel comfortable and get out there and want to do the best that you can. So I tell you what, Shia, can you do the honors telling our viewers and our listeners, wherever they're watching it, whether they're watching on E360 TV, YouTube, LinkedIn, or over 25 plus live streaming mechanisms that welcome to the show and introduce the title of the show, the purpose, and also introduce this great guest that we have on the show today.
Oh, most definitely. So the title of today's show is The Hunt. It's more than a resume with Jennifer Florax, the author. And the purpose of the show is getting to know Jennifer. She's an author and a hobby writer, and talk about finding a job and how it is a lot of work and why first impressions are so important and how career paths can take many forms. And really, what does success really look like? So let's talk a little bit about our guest today, Jennifer Florax. She considers the basis of her writing to be her life experience with a desire to share the lessons learned with others to save them a little pain and shave some time off the learning curve. She has a bachelor's degree in management with experience in change management and infrastructure asset management. And just for extra fun, she's a certified esthetician. Oh gosh, I can't pronounce it properly. Sorry, Jennifer. On a personal note, she has two grown children, has been married to her husband for 29 years and counting. She does not claim to be an expert, just a mom that is a share of hard lessons learned and years of experience in all sorts of work environments. She considers herself a hobby writer with her first book, Survival Guide for the Working World, purely an accident. Having recently finished university and found herself with some spare time, started writing down her musings about the world around her. Once she had several topics into her rambling, she realized she might have something worth sharing. So the content was rewritten for public consumption, and here we are today. Jennifer's second book, The Hunt, The Job of Finding Employment, happened much the same way. Conversations with her children spun into a learning guide for others to help with the ins and outs of finding employment. The James Cooley Show, It's Your Life, welcomes our guest today, author and hobby writer Jennifer Florex.
Welcome to the show, Jennifer. Welcome to the show. It's an absolute pleasure having you. I know we talked a couple of times, and now we got you in the flesh. How are you doing today?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing great. It's fairly warm here in Canada, so we're not freezing, so that's a good thing.
It's kind of chilly. We're in Texas right now. We're in Dallas, Texas, Michelle and I, and it's kind of cool here today. But it fluctuates in and out, and but it's not freezing, it's not snowing, it's not all that good stuff. But we're having fun. So talking to you in the green room,
Mhm.
you mentioned that you consider yourself a mom, and writing this new book of yours that's going to be coming out, The Hunt, is very exciting because you talk about finding a job. But before we get to that, can you tell our viewers and our listeners where did you, what was it like growing up in Canada?
Well, I grew up in northern Alberta, so a very small town, less than 2,000 people, give or take. And that was a small oil and mining, farming community, excuse me. Growing up in Canada, I mean, you obviously the weather, it fluctuates. And our saying here in Alberta is if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes, it'll change again. But in Canada, we have so many interesting things. So our vacations really consisted of staying within our province, maybe the neighboring provinces. We have so much to see. There's so many golden gems that you just need to look for. We can drive a couple hours, we're in the mountains, or we can go the opposite way, we're in the Badlands and Drumheller. So just an interesting place to grow up, where so much opportunity, and so much to see. It's very, very pretty country.
These days, I would get an opportunity. I have never been to Canada. Michelle been there a few times, and I'm looking forward to coming at one of these days. Because we do have a lot of guests that's come on the show from Canada. So Jennifer, who were your role models when you was growing up? And I know it had to be some influences along the line to help shape you into the person that you are today.
I had there was a principal and my high school English teacher that really encouraged me a lot. And I'll be honest, I was a teenager. I didn't really listen to them. So I started listening to them as I got older, and realizing that I can do stuff. My biggest role models and I will say mentors didn't really come into my life until in my 20s. And I found two fantastic people that really helped me grow as a person, learn, and encouraged me to go to school and to pursue whatever I thought I could pursue. But my high school folks, they did believe in me. I just didn't believe in myself. I, in fact, failed English 30 in grade 12. And I do want to say, Mrs. Charney, I did finally learn to write because she was always frustrated with me. But, you will hear things in your life and then they're not really applicable. You don't listen to them until they're a little bit older. But that I do appreciate the encouragement she gave me then. It's just more valuable to me now.
Wow. So you mentioned two children, and you ran some your books by them, talked to them, and for getting their thoughts on writing a book. Did you always want to be an author, or it was just something that just came to you one day?
It was an accident. I always thought I couldn't write. My mentors taught me how to write for work, which was technical writing. And then it just started coming out, and it accidentally became a book. And then the second one accidentally became a book. And it really was my kids asking me questions. So as they grew, their questions were always so good. They made me work really hard for the answers. And then I started writing it down. And my thoughts were, if my kids are asking this, maybe others are too. Or maybe some kids are scared to ask, those questions that maybe their parents will say, hey, maybe you should just know this. And they really didn't. They don't teach the nuances of engagement and interaction with finding a job or talking to employers. So that's what I was endeavoring to do.
Okay, so why don't you tell us a little bit about your first book? I know that's not the title of the show because we're gonna get to that one in a minute. Tell us what prompted you into writing that book and coming up with the title. First of all, what's the title of your first book?
My first book is Survival Guide to the Working World: What School Doesn't Teach You.
Okay.
I finished university late in life, so I found myself with spare time. My kids they weren't grown; they were in high school and junior high, maybe. And I was having a bad day and I had a bad experience at my workplace and I needed to get it out. And I started writing it. And then all these little topics would come up. I'd start writing them, and then maybe some stuff society wise. And it wasn't good writing. It was a rant. And then I got about to chapter 18 and realized that I might actually have something worthwhile sharing. So I rewrote it. So, it had polite language in it. And then it ended up publishing it. And it was just an interesting little short stories and short lessons on small things in the workplace, like taking a phone call, writing an email, interacting with your colleagues, understanding perspective, listening versus hearing. They're very different things. So just educating, new workers on what that actually means, and really getting into the nuances of the workplace.
Wow. So that prompted you, and then you just started writing, and it's great how you said that you bring your kids in, because they give you ideas, they give us ideas that we don't think about, but then we're able to incorporate their thoughts into our thoughts, and when they're reading our stuff, they know that they contributed to us writing and coming up with the things that we write down, especially my kids. So I tell you what, we're gonna take a station break,
Okay.
but we're gonna come back and we're gonna pick it up, and we're gonna talk to Jennifer, and we're gonna talk about the hunt. So if you want to be part of this conversation, all you have to do is just go to the comments, ask this great guest any question that you want to. And I promise you, I'll get it on the screen. We'll get your answer. It's your life, and we'll be back shortly after the break.
I never wanna leave. Yeah, I'm right where I wanna be. We got something you and me, and I can't get rid of this feeling. Just like a magnet, we're just like a magnet. The things we have can be taken for granted. Now I know that it has always been you. I can't help it, I'm so drawn to you. Just like a magnet, we're just like the magnet. The things we have can be taken for granted. Now I know that it has always been you. I can't help it, I'm so drawn to you. Hey. I'm so drawn to you. I'm so drawn to you.
Really get a chance to know who you are. And once you know who you are, you truly know who you are, love who you are. Love who you are. You're a masterpiece. Love who you are. Love who you were born to be. Love me some me. That's what I'm talking about. When you leave high school, you gotta know today or tomorrow, hopefully today, what your plans are. Hopefully, there is no bad decision unless there is no plan. Create, collaborate, commit with confidence. Commit with what? Commit with what? And everything that you do.
Hello, welcome back to the James Cooley Show. It's your life, and I got my great guest here, Jennifer Florax, and she's talking about what we call the hunt, and what that entails is, when you're hunting for a job, you're searching for a job, some of the things that it's entail that because the job, a hunt for a job is a job itself. And she just wrote her second book called The Hunt, and we are about to delve directly off into that. So, if you got any questions, if you want to be part of this conversation, all you have to do is go to the comments on whatever device you're watching this on. Put in there, ask you a question, and I promise, I will get it on the screen. So, hey Jennifer, let's go off into the title of the show today. Can you explain to our audience why you chose The Hunt is more than a resume? So can you explain that to our viewers and our listeners?
Well, my book is called The Hunt, the Job for Finding Employment. But today I wanted to talk about how a resume is everything you look for in a job. You need more than your resume. You need your behaviors, your attitude, your plan, a targeted audience. What kind of job are you looking for? So more than your resume, you need to identify what you want and where you want to work. And I think that it's way more than your resume. And it is a job to find employment. So both my subtitle and the title of the show are quite relevant.
So tell us about your experience. I guess you was in the job market a time or two, and certain things that you came across that you felt that were relevant and so important that you wrote them down. Let's talk about some of those things.
Um, well, resumes. Let's start with the resume. There's so many ways and formats, and these days it's you can get a template online, and I would say with your templates online, there should be no reason for a messy resume. So a messy resume indicates disorganization. If you were a hiring manager, um, saying that you have attention to detail, but your bullets are all out of alignment, or you've used different fonts all over, or you've you know misorganized things, or things are in the wrong order, then it really doesn't give yourself that selling feature that is what your resume is for. um, there's a lot of folks that, when they look for a job, they park themselves in front of a computer and hope for the best. So what we talk about is really getting out there and getting physical in your job search. And, the onus is on you to make those opportunities happen.
What are some of the things, just say you mentioned resume, that's
Mhm.
important key factors that employers are looking for when they see a resume? Because I can remember uh, looking at resumes for people that I was hiring for the job, the first couple of words, the first sentence or two, I kind of pushed it to the side for the time being. What are some eye-catching advice would you recommend our viewers to make sure that stands out in the resume?
I think writing your highlights of your skills. So really doing a summary of you at the top of your resume. What can you do that other people can't? And then what I'd like to see is jobs in descending order. So your current job down to jobs that are relevant. I would say, if you're my age, nobody wants to know where I worked when I was in high school. They want the industry relevant jobs that are applicable to what they're applying for. But the most important thing is under each job, tell me what you did there. What skills did you do? As an employer, I'll look at that and say, is it directly related to the job or person I'm looking for? Or is it a transferable skill? Is it something like data entry? Data entry you can use anywhere. Typing you can use anywhere. Research, that is necessary anywhere. Problem solving, kind of a vague term, but if you can demonstrate it with an example of how you use problem solving or critical thinking skills, and you can see that in the resume, that will put you further ahead of the potential pool of candidates that the employer is looking at.
Do you believe that it's important to put numbers or quantitative information as part of your resume when you're describing, case in point, how many people you're supervising, and can you talk to our audience a little bit about that?
I would say probably not. It depends on what it is and what kind of job you're applying for. So you're a student applying to work at a fast food place, then definitely not. If you're maybe in college and applying to be a team lead, and you have had staff before, then maybe. If you're a CEO and looking for another CEO job, then definitely you would talk about the budgets that you've handled, or the number of staff that you had, and the number of people directly reporting to you, and what your accomplishments were. But it really depends on the industry. It depends on the industry jargon, and it depends on what the employer is looking for. So in some cases you wouldn't mention that, in some others you would. It would just depend on what kind of job you're applying on.
Yeah. So, what are some of the most important things? And we'll get to the don'ts in a minute. Some of the most important things that a potential job hunter would have on the resume or application, also documentation that they might bring with them to show further. I mean, if that was brought up, So, can we talk a little bit about that?
Well, first off, your name, address, and phone number, very important. Have seen a few of those where they didn't have any contact information. So you're definitely not getting a job if they can't contact you. But your highlights are your skills, your jobs in descending order, your education, very important. So not just university. If you're a student, do you have grade 12? If you're out of high school, but you've taken some small courses, list that as well. If you're in university and you've taken a side course, say in accounting, list that as well. Like, it's very important to demonstrate the educational skills that you have. Things like documentation, I would say maybe not attach it to the resume unless it's specifically asked for. References would be the same thing, not unless it's specifically asked for. If you get called for an interview, I would say bring that with you, but don't list your references on a resume. You can say things like references available upon request. What that does is lets the employer know that you have references, but it's not presumptuous either. And then what if you haven't asked your references and then they phone them and they don't know about it? So it gives some outs and some latitude to make adjustments as you go, particularly if you're mass applying on jobs. It helps to genericize the resume a bit, so you don't have to write it all the time, but it's useful to keep those things as separate documents.
With references, a lot of people put references on when they have contacted people in many, many years. Would you recommend that the references that you place on the resume, because a serious employer is going to do their due diligence and call, and if they can't get in touch with your references, or the person that you put down 30 years ago is not relevant, meaning that um, they can't adequately describe who you are, or etc. Is that important to have up-to-date references, and where the contact information, and is it relevant that you contact the references that you are going to put down to give them a heads up that they might be getting a call?
Very important. I think it's very important to keep them up to date, to have them as recent as possible, and to give your references a fair warning and ask them, would you be willing to give me a reference? I believe in most cases, employers are not allowed to contact references without explicit permission from the candidate. So that's another issue as well. You have to have that signed consent that you're giving out personal information. So you need to ensure that the person giving you a reference is willing to do so, willing to have their personal information out there, and you've given permission for the employer to chat as well. Having someone that supervised your work is more important than just a personal reference. So younger folks do have challenges with that. My suggestion to my own kids when they were first looking for a job was ask the neighbor. For young children that maybe haven't had a job yet, ask your neighbor. You cut grass for them or shoveled their walk. They can speak to your work ethic. They can speak to how well you did the job, or ask a teacher. You're in high school, ask your teacher, can you be a job reference for me? And then as you grow and mature in your career, you will get a broader network and you'll have more folks that supervise your work. But it's starting out that makes it a bit harder. So there's so many folks around you that you can ask. Just don't use your mom, because your mom loves you. She's going to give you a good reference no matter what.
Jennifer, I got a good question. I got a question for you. As we know that to get into the interview, sometimes, people who already work there, they'll recommend their family, friends, and everything like that, which is great because there's like a ton of resumes that's coming through the recruiter's desk or HR department. And an employer looks favorably on an employee who might have somebody in mind. My question to you is, what are the pros and cons of recommending a friend or family member to your employer if you have never worked with them, but they're still a family or friend because you don't know their work habits? And that can come back on you, because if they get hired and they don't work out, they're not going to look favorably upon any more referrals. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think it really depends. I personally would never work with family because I want to maintain being family. I have recommended a friend for a job in my own past career. It didn't work out well. It was unfortunate. Loved the person, but they didn't do the greatest job. Maybe didn't show up for work. I mean, this is a very long time ago. And I felt guilty the whole time. So I think only if I'd worked with them before in a professional capacity, I would personally, like in my opinion, recommend them if I've seen their work, know their work ethic. But just randomly, hey, I like, Sally. Let's have Sally come in. If I don't know anything about them, I wouldn't recommend them, because your boss is depending on you to give them, or the organization to give them, a sound recommendation. And if your trust is then eroded in your workplace, if you've recommended someone that doesn't work out, which really ends up costing in the long run in time and resources if it's a bad hire.
That's a good answer, because I recommended someone a couple of years ago for a previous job, but then that person told me, it's a good friend, that they may not stay long at this job if they're hired. So I'm like, okay, I'm having them pull your resume. And so I told my employer, and they really were grateful that I told them that, because it really does look bad. They won't tell you that, but it really does look bad.
I would add that hiring is a lot of work. Hiring is a lot of effort, expense, time, lost productivity while you don't have a body. And employers don't like doing it. It's not something they love to go out and do that I'm aware of. It's usually a heavy sigh, I got to do this again. Really, no matter what industry. And I mean, I've worked retail, I've worked fast food, and I don't remember ever having a boss that got excited about going out and having to hire again.
Wow, this is a very exciting conversation. Jennifer, we're gonna take a station break,
Okay.
but we're gonna come back and we're gonna pick it up, because this is absolutely fantastic information that you are putting out there, and our viewers out there. If you want to be part of this conversation, all you have to do is go to the comments, put it into the comments, and you can ask this great guest any questions you want to. We'll be back shortly after the break with a lot more Jennifer. It's Your Life. I'm Dr. James J.C. Cooley. See you shortly. Hello. Hey, I'm James Cooley. I am the founder and CEO of the J.C. Cooley Foundation, Options, Opportunities, Lasting Choice Program. Our primary mission is to help build a foundation of our youth and young adults and communities. And we encourage everyone to dream big, think big, and be big at everything you do. And the way that you do that is, first of all, you got to believe in yourself. You have to believe in yourself. You have to know that you are here for a purpose. You also have to be able to step out your comfort zone and do things that you probably didn't think that you can do. Wow, welcome back to It's Your Life. And I tell you, hey Jennifer, that last segment was so inspiring, and it was so telling because Michelle brought up a question about hiring friends or recommending friends and family. Sometimes just like you were saying, sometimes that might not work unless you know unless you know their work ethics. Just because they're a family member or a friend doesn't necessarily mean they need to be working beside you at the job. So
Separation.
So hey Jennifer, we was one of the things that we did not talk about was some of the don'ts that we include in our resume, because a lot of people think that they can put anything down there. They fabricate about a lot of stuff, and depending on what the job is, they're gonna kind of go back and look some of that information up. What are some of the don'ts that you recommend people to think very careful about before they put that in the resume?
I would say don't lie. Make sure you're always honest, because there are so many ways to find out exactly what you've done and what your education is. Those things can be looked up quite easily. Things that I don't particularly care to see as an objective on a resume. Your objective is to get a job. Like, the fluffy statements don't do a lot, in my opinion. I would say keep your resume clean. I've seen some with coffee stains on them, really not a good look. And some that thought that making their resume stand out was printing it on pink paper with flowers on it. It was an odd look, but really just keep it simple. And remember that your resume is the sale of you. It's selling yourself to the employer to say, here's my sales tactic. I'm the best person for this job, and here's why. and you demonstrate that with every sentence of that resume in its structure and in its look and feel. So don't let it get messy. Don't have spelling mistakes. Definitely tell the truth in all instances. And if you are unsure of how your skill set maybe applies, or maybe you did something, you're not sure if it's quite there, you can say, I have knowledge of something, or I've been exposed to this technology or this aspect. And then if you get to the interview stage, and if it's relevant to what the employer is looking for, they can dig into it more with you during an interview. But make sure that you can back up your statements that you say in your resume.
Jennifer, two questions for you. One, you of course we don't want people to fabricate their resume. Employers, if someone puts on their resume they went to a specific college, right, and it's not true, or that they graduated but it's not true, do employees really look and see what your educational background is, or are they more interested in looking at where you were employed? That's number one. And so let's start with that first.
Okay. It depends on the job. If a job has a requirement that you're an engineer or an accountant, those are regulated industries that require specific education. That liability could or may fall on the person as well as the employer. So their employers are going to protect themselves and ensure that this person has the educational qualifications that are required to be successful in the job. And if you can't provide proof, they can seek proof because you need to be registered for these places. If it finds out that you've lied and you were offered the job and couldn't produce those documents, you could be uninvited to join that company.
It's most definitely. And second question is, what about video resumes? I read, and this has been over a year or so ago, that was a trend. But let's talk about present time. Is this really a trend now, video resumes? A lot of companies, they do interviews through, Zoom, WebEx, Teams. What about submitting a video resume? Is that something that's happening, or that's something that was a fad and it's gone away?
I actually have not heard of that, so I have no idea. I could even answer that question.
Yeah, but I definitely read something about that. But yeah, so definitely it was important to not fabricate your resume. You never know. And, you're really living on borrowed time, wondering if your employer is going to find out that you didn't graduate or you don't have this specific degree. So who wants to be employed and live like that? So I definitely agree. Just be honest and don't exaggerate your experience in a certain field or a certain software, let's say. If you're not an expert in PowerPoint, don't say you're an expert in PowerPoint. Just say, I have experienced it, but I'm really not an expert.
Sometimes they'll ask you, what do you consider your level at? And you can say, I'm a beginner, or I'm intermediate, or I'm learning. There's online courses for those kinds of things, and there's nothing stopping anyone from looking for the free courses online for things like basic software, and that would help them beef up their resume and beef up their knowledge set to help them attain employment.
Most definitely.
Oh, you're on mute.
My bad. Hey Jennifer, I like how you have knowledge of certain things, because that's probably the right way of saying it. And you're not saying that you're an expert, but you have knowledge of it. And and if the employee asks how much knowledge, what do you consider yourself? Also, a question that Michelle asked, that still happens, for as Zoom interviews, and I'm talking about kind of live interviews on Zoom and other streaming platforms. That still is going on today. But just sending in a video, I don't know about that.
There's a lot of online interviews now, and that's a good thing. It gives a broader range of opportunities. I haven't seen or even heard of video resumes, but it's an interesting field to explore. It actually never crossed my mind, but definitely virtual interviews is becoming more of a thing.
Yeah. So Jennifer, you have said that leaving an impression takes many forms. Can you explain that a little bit? And also, can you explain what most interviewers, how should they prepare for a interview?
So first impressions, I think, are very important, particularly when you're searching for a job. If you're cold calling, for example, which is where you literally take a stack of resumes, walk around to businesses and ask if they're hiring, make sure you're dressed nice. Make sure you're polite. Ask very nicely, can I speak with the manager? Are you hiring? Walking in there and demanding impolitely a job leaves a poor first impression, and your resume will end up on the no pile. Even behaviors, so ensuring that you're always professional regardless of the industry, and dress. Just because you're applying to be say a mechanic or a service person at a oil changing facility, dress nice pair of pants, nice shirt, maybe a skirt, maybe a jacket. It really doesn't matter, but ensure that you're well presented, and it gives you that vibe that you can be trusted and that you have that work ethic and are willing to put in the work to learn the job. So it's really making sure that you take every opportunity to leave a good first impression, because a bad one's hard to come back from. So even your handshake, if you're, particularly if a man is being introduced to the woman, I've had men shake my hand that made me feel like I was living in the 1800s. I'm like, no, just a nice firm handshake that demonstrates professionalism. So it might be a gender thing, it might not, but that felt like condescending to me as a person I was being introduced to. So it's making sure that you're treating everyone equally. You don't know who the boss is when you walk into that business to say I'm looking for a job. So you're polite to everyone. The receptionist could be the one taking your resume, and believe me, they're going to have words if you were not nice to them, and they're the one passing your resume off to the boss.
Wow. Jennifer, what about, and of course, during an interview, whether it's, through Zoom or in person, of course, we want everyone to be relaxed and be a little personable. But what about oversharing too much about your personal life or oversharing about your disgruntled opinion about your previous job or your previous boss? What are the cons about that?
Sorry, that makes me giggle. Oversharing, yeah. I usually attribute oversharing to nerves. I myself begin to babble in an interview. In my head, that's a nervous piece. So, as the interviewer, I would consider it my job to bring them back on track, maybe stall the question, say, can we move this along? So in my head, it's a conversation, and you're supporting that interviewee knowing that they are very nervous in most cases. So, and then I lost the other half of the question. Apologies.
That's
Sorry,
okay.
Michelle.
We're gonna have to take a station break, but you know what? This is very interesting, and we're gonna take a station break, and we're gonna come back. We're gonna pick it up. We're gonna talk about in your book about rejections. So I tell you, hey, stay tuned because we're gonna take a station break, and we're gonna come back, and we're gonna talk to Jennifer a lot more. It's Your Life. I'm Dr. James J.C. Cooley. We'll see you shortly after the break.
Noah Dingley here, producer of The James Cooley Show, It's Your Life. And the new audio version of James' book, Country Boy, City Boy, A Journey That Ain't Over Yet, is a must-have. James shares his true life story of struggle and success in America. It's both a cautionary tale and a roadmap to achieving the American dream. Get the new audio version of Country Boy, City Boy, A Journey That Ain't Over Yet by James Cooley on Amazon.com or wherever audiobooks are sold.
Hello, welcome back. Welcome back to the James Cooley Show. It's Your Life. And Jennifer, just been an absolute pleasure. A lot of information that you're sharing with our listeners and our viewers. And we got a whole lot more. We got the better part of 9 minutes to go. And I'm going to try to get a lot of this stuff that we have not asked in. And so reading your book, you got a chapter in there where you talk about rejection. And some people, when they get rejected from a job, they kind of take it to their heart and they want to give up. What is your advice on that? You might not be a fit for every organization that you interview with, and just because you get a no does not necessarily mean that you are out there in the workforce. Talk about that.
Just because you got a no doesn't mean that you didn't do a good job. What it generally means is, particularly if you made it to the interview process, is that maybe someone had a little bit more than you. So it's not you, it's them. Someone might have done that exact job before, so they're an easy fit into the existing position. Or, maybe they nailed that interview. And maybe you were nervous and stumbled a bit, or there's so many different reasons as to why maybe you weren't selected. And you also have to think sheer volume. So if you walk into a retail store, they maybe have 1 or 2 positions. What if they got 500 applications? So that's the piece that you need to put yourself in their shoes on. How are they going to choose? And they're going to find someone that fits best for what they need. And maybe you just didn't gel with the person interviewing you, or, maybe you didn't have quite the right skill sets, but you were successful because you got an interview. That is success. And consider that practice for the next one.
Wow. So you offer both the employer and employee perspective in your book. Tell us why you included both of those perspectives in there.
I offered that simply as to flip it around and really think, if you're an employee, maybe flip that around and think about, what if I was the employer, what would I want? What am I looking for? What skill sets, what efforts am I putting in? And it surprisingly turned out to be almost exactly the same as the person hunting for a job. So you're hunting for an employee and looking for that fit and that experience and the cultural needs of the organization. And you're really need to think about that when you're applying for that job, of what exactly are they looking for and how am I going to match my skill sets to what that employer wants.
Wow. Jennifer, you talk about when you was hunting, you call it chapter in your book is called My Hunt. And you talk about the help you receive in your journey. How important is it to have some help, even as, and, even if you don't ask for it, but other people give you help and give you advice? Let's talk about that.
Well, I included the chapter based on recommendation from one of my mentors. She had said, you had such an interesting career journey. Maybe add that in there. So my first help was my mom. My mom helped me get a job to the local bakery. And then I was able to get the courage to find my next job on my own. So that helping hand really gave me the experience to keep trying, to keep applying. And then even as I got older, I would start to doubt my own skill set. So help became a different form. I had a colleague sit down with me and help me write a bulleted list of what my skills were. Having that outside perspective to offer you encouragement, to help you look at yourself in a more positive light, because we're our own worst critics of what we can and can't do. And then seeing that perspective and hey, look at all these skills I can do that I never even realized I consciously had. So that kind of helps as well. And even the encouragement to go find a job or to network or to introduce you to other people. So, we talked earlier about recommending friends and family. Well, you don't need to. What you can do is say, I'm going to make an introduction. And then it's up to you to take it from there and to sell yourself. So it's still help. It's still someone helping you open those doors, and don't be afraid to ask for it.
Wow. So first of all, how can our viewers and our listeners get a hold of your book? And what is one thing you hope the reader take away from your book?
My book is available on Amazon. I do have a website that actually links right to Amazon. So Amazon in Canada is through Chapters. You can order it. And then there's a few other sellers. I think it's on Smashwords for ebook, and I believe Kindle Reader as well. Takeaways for viewers, I would say you're not alone. We're all in this struggle. My book is just one perspective. But what my hope is, if folks are reading it, is to take away the little cracked door of help and encourage them to find more help. And it's just one option to think about what you need to do, and maybe seek out other perspectives and opinions and keep trying. Just keep trying. Don't give up on that hunt for a job.
How can our listeners get in touch with you? I know you mentioned your website again. Can you tell me that one more time?
It's jenniferflorax.com. Pretty simple. I do have Twitter. I'm on also Facebook as well under Jennifer Florax Author.
Hey, Jennifer, I'm going to tell you that this is an outstanding interview, and I really appreciate that you taking the time to come on the James Cooley Show and share all of these great tips, because we all need them, and we all find ourselves in the hunt at one time or another for a job. So absolutely extraordinary information you put out. I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. I'd like to thank my great executive producer and co-host Michelle Cooley for always putting together these great shows. Most importantly, I'd like to thank our listeners and viewers who take the time to listen to the James Cooley Show every day. I tell you what, I always want you to dream big, think big, and be big at everything that you do. We'll be back tomorrow. Same time, same place. It's Your Life. I'm Dr. James J.C. Cooley. See you later.